Aralyn says, I am the oldest. Let's see, you were born in 1946, I believe.
6.
1946, so that makes her the oldest
The wisest.
and wisest.
I don't know about that, but certainly the oldest. I'm still learning.
Well, that's a perfect segue. Laura, I'll let you begin
Well,
with
tell us
Aralyn.
a little bit, Lita, please tell us a little bit about Aralyn, since you know her so well.
Oh my gosh, ladies, Aralyn was the woman I sought out. When I moved to Austin, by myself, basically, I moved here on my own, and I read about Aralyn in a book. It was a book about the history of Austin, and Aralyn used to throw these amazing parties. And all of you that know me know that I love to throw costume parties and theme parties, where this book had a whole chapter about Aralyn's parties, and they were the rage of the city. Everybody was clamoring for tickets. Like there was like a black market exchange to get tickets to one of her parties. It was a whole culture around these parties. And I said to myself, I need to know this woman. Who is this woman? So luckily for me, she is still out in Austin, big, strong presence, doing her work, sharing her creativity, her art. She runs a group every Tuesday morning. You can tune in and listen to different topics. She's moved it to Zoom now, so we can all attend virtually. And she talks about all different kinds of topics, ranging from sex to oh gosh, I've been to a couple of them, and there's a real variety of topics, a variety of people attend. She's also been in shows. She's an actor. She let me check my notes here. I was winging it.
That's a lot. That's a lot right there. I mean,
yeah, that is.
I don't think we'll be able to cover her lot
Okay,
because she's
yeah.
the wisest.
Yes,
So
just
she's
go
the wisest,
visit.
we may not be able to cover.
Go visit her
everything.
website, aralyn.com. Visit her website. You can see all about her movies. She's been a dominatrix. She made a movie about being a dominatrix. And she's written a book about not having kids in the 60s, being childless, which was very uncommon, to not be married and having children during an era when that was pretty much one of the only options for women. So she wrote a whole book about that, and you'll receive that later. So much to be said. I'll let you take it away, Laura, and you can find out more at aralyn.com.
Hello, everyone. I'm Laura Wall. I am an online coach. I used to have to explain what that is, but since we're all online, people know what that is. I'm also a writer, a speaker, an artist, but tonight is not my night. Tonight I get to be an interviewer, and I get to hear from the wisdom of so many beautiful women. So if you see me look away, I'm reading my notes on another screen, but we're going to have Aralyn Hughes as our first Maven. I'm super excited. I got to chat with her yesterday. So Aralyn, I'm going to press the timer so we stay on track, and let's get started. Well, let's see, Laura Wall, and there we go. Hey, Aralyn.
Hello.
So, oh, wonderful. I love those glasses. So one of the questions that you chose to answer is about 2 different ages in your life that you felt like were really pivotal, where there was maybe a big transformation or a big change for you. And I know you've got many to choose from. So if you can tell me about 2 of those ages that were just powerful in your life.
I cannot limit it to 2. So I'm just going to fly through the whole thing. And I can do it in 10 minutes. Hide and watch. So I'm starting. I like to say I'm a part of the wisdom generation. I'm also a part of the boomer generation. I lived through the 60s. I was in Haight-Ashbury and all that. So, you know, that's history to many of you, but I was actually there. I was born in a little town in Oklahoma. I called it a peak and plum town. Peak around the corner, plum out of town. And I had a perfect childhood. I had Ozzie and Harriet parents. Everything was smooth. I played with my dolls. I thought life was good. I couldn't have had it any better. Everything was wonderful until I was about 12. And then I started my menstrual period. And that was a boogaboo for me the rest of my life in terms of hassle and pain, embarrassment, all kinds of things. So that was a transition point for sure. Plus, around that time is when the next door neighbor, a Baptist deacon, decided to do sexual abuse things with me. I didn't tell anybody. I didn't tell anybody until I was in my 60s, and I told about it on stage in a show, a one-woman show that I did. So we'll come back to that later. I did not know there were any options other than getting married and having kids. It never occurred to me. I didn't see any role models that were any different than that. And the ones that were old maids, spinsters, you know, people that was like, you know, it was like a fate worse than death, not to be able to have somebody ask you to get married. What was wrong with you? And so at 18, I had boyfriends and stuff, but I was a part of the generation of women who went to college in spades in 1968. And what we went for is to get an MRS degree. You know what that is? Mrs. Smith, Mrs. something. And so I was doing that, and I got real involved in my sorority, and I became president of the sorority, and I started to understand my leadership skills and my ability to make things happen. But about the time I was ready to graduate with a home economics degree, because I wanted to major in what I was going to do, and that was be the best wife, mother, and homemaker that the world had ever seen. And so I was all ready to do that, but nobody asked me to get married. So I started getting a little worried, but then somebody asked me to get married. I didn't quite know about that, but my family thought they were great. My friends thought they were great. Everybody kind of acted like, this is an opportunity. You better take this guy. There might not be another opportunity. So I got married to a military submarine nuclear powered officer. We started traveling all over the country. I had never been out of Oklahoma to any degree. I had gone to Disneyland and worked for the summer, like George, and worked for the summer. So I'd done some traveling, but never on this scale. And so into the marriage, I was thinking, well, this is the way it's supposed to be. But my expectations and what I thought that was going to be like was, number one, not like my parents. Number two, not any fun. And number three, I just felt like I was in prison. And it took me 9 years to get out of that marriage. And when I did, with a lot of shame, because back in 1976 or so, if you got a divorce, it meant something was wrong with you. You, number one, shamed your parents. And how could you do such a thing? And my mother said, you know, he has a job. He doesn't drink. He doesn't beat you up. What's wrong? And so anyway, I got a divorce. I didn't know what was going to happen after that, but I knew that I wanted to be financially independent and never depend on a man again for my income, because I had lots of issues with that, because my value of moving all over the country and doing all the household management was not valued like his job where he made money. So at age 30, I thought, well, I'm just going to sit here in front of the TV and play some cards and do some sewing and just live the rest of my life like that. But it didn't turn out that way. I suddenly had lust like I had never had before, never had in my marriage. And it was like there were so many men, so little time, and I could probably trip them and beat them to the floor. I was a wild woman sexually. And at the same time, I had this really straight real estate job. And I was a real estate broker, and I was wearing the high heels and the pantyhose and doing that whole routine. I lived my hippie life in my 30s. And I swore when I got married, when I got a divorce, that I would never get married again. And everybody said, oh yeah, you will, you will. I was like, no. And I didn't. So I have lived 30 years with parents or husband, and then I have lived 40 years by myself. So people are worried about me during this virus thing because I'm alone. But let me tell you, I'm comfortable with it. I like it. I like my own company. I'm having a good time. Now, so in my 40s and 50s, I was successful career-wise. I traveled. I went all around the world. I began to appreciate the fact that men in other countries have a lot more appreciation for women than the men in my own country. And I also started having feminist leaders like Gloria Steinem, Jermaine Greer, and all of those people who were out there basically saying, you are not alone. You think like we do, and we deserve equality, and we deserve to have choices in our, whether we're childless or not, or whether we are child-free or not, or whether we're married or not, and it's all okay. And then I had a mentor that was my transition point about having children, because it was like, I didn't want to have children, but everybody said, oh my God, you know, you'll regret it. And I asked her one day, I said, you have 4 kids, you are 14 years older than me, and I have to make this decision about kids. So what would you do if you were me? And without a beat, she said, I wouldn't have any children. I love my children, and I would lay down on a train track to protect them. But if I had it to do over again, I wouldn't do it. So there was my freedom. Number 1, I didn't have to be married. Number 2, I didn't have to have kids. And I had a whole new life, but no idea what it would be like, because there were no role models for women who were single, financially independent, and didn't have children. And as time went over, in 2008, really, the market changed, and I got out of real estate, and I said the rest of my life will be spent on a daily basis. I turned that off. Anyway, on a daily basis, being creative. And that's what I've done. I went on stage, I did 10 one-woman shows. I talked about everything, all the topics nobody wanted to talk about, you know, like the sexual abuse, about being single, about sex, relationships. And now I'm in my 70s. I was in my 60s not that long ago. And I just realized that men in my life are just cause too much chaos and too much stress. My life is great the way it is, and I'm very happy with the way it is. And so I kind of eliminated men. I had a hysterectomy along the way, and so that was a great freedom. And I look at my life as that it was a puzzle, and I got all the parts, but I didn't get the box that showed the picture. So I've had to fill in the parts and try them and mess around, and that those final parts are now coming in. And I am free because I don't have menstrual periods, and I don't have to worry about being pregnant, and I don't have to take birth control. And I have now moved into a time where I have another freedom, and that's the freedom. I'm not as sexual as I used to be. That's a great freedom. I mean, I have a vibrator if that needs to be taken care of, but I don't need men in my life anymore. And so I can have them or not have them and all that kind of stuff. So anyway, that's kind of trajectory. What I started out thinking I would be, no way. You know, if you told me when I was 16 that I would be the person I am today, I would have just been beside myself. I wouldn't even have, number one, ability to envision it, because my generation has probably seen more change than any generation in history, certainly in the United States. So
that was a great review. You stayed on task. We got it in 10 minutes. Fantastic. And what I heard there was age 12, you had that menstrual period, and like, oh, it's kind of gross to be a woman. You hit the wife thing and you're like, oh, this isn't right for me. And then you kind of exploded and found out who you were. And I can tell that freedom and freedom of choice is of highest value to you. One of the things that you and I talked about before was something that's really important for you to discuss a little bit more, and you touched on it slightly in your overview, is the Me Too movement that's been here recently, and yet you yourself were a victim, a recovered victim of, an empowered victim of abuse. So tell me a little bit about what Me Too means to you, Aralyn.
Well, the fact that I had the experience and I did not tell anyone until I was in my 60s. And then I did a show around it and spoke about it on stage. I mean, there's no reason to talk in detail now or on stage, but I certainly talked about the experience, what I remembered, how I felt. And it was a really, in the moment, it was like so confusing and so like a Baptist deacon would do this. It was you know, I was manipulated in all the things that I understand now in terms of candy and Dr. Peppers and all this kind of stuff. And he had a dog I liked and but really what I want to talk about is the fact that when I did this maybe 10 years ago, before it was talked about as much as it is now, after the show, the next day, the next week, or immediately after the show, both men and women came up to me and said, that happened to me too. And in my vulnerability and exposure of that, I opened a door for other people to tell someone for the first time what their experience or what happened to them. And I kind of understand now that it's almost like everybody. In my age group, I have talked to a lot of people, and really, if you want to take a group of 10 women, there's 8 that have had that experience, 1 that almost did, and 1 that doesn't know what we're talking about. So I just want people to not feel alone in that experience if they had it, because that's been happening certainly since 1946. You know, when I started in the world.
And that's the power of vulnerability is we feel like we're taking all of our clothes off and we're completely naked, and we've got people walking up to us going, I'm naked with you.
Right.
So
it's power. But I was disempowered by the experience, and I had to become empowered again. And people all say, everybody said, you have to forgive him. It's like, no, I don't. You know, I know that all that religious stuff around forgiveness, but I talked about it on stage. I used his name and I wrote about it in a book. So we're even, and I don't need to forgive him, and I will never forgive him for what he did. And of course he's dead because he's, you know, older than me.
So let's look at the contrast. So here you mentioned how you were disempowered by someone taking this from you and manipulating you with things that a kid would get manipulated with, a dog and Dr. Pepper. So tell me about how you took your power back. Tell me more about this passion that has shown up in your life as wild sex, your words, as well as maybe your passion around your creativity.
Well, I didn't like being disempowered in my marriage. I didn't like being disempowered in my career that I started. I constantly had to battle men. I had to speak up, and I had to be better than they were. I had to sell more houses, and I did, and I had to make more money, and I did, in order to get any respect, and even then not get it. But I certainly understood empowerment and disempowerment in my marriage, in that time frame. I understood it in my career, and it leveled out a little bit after that. But still, many times I have to, you know, grab somebody by the balls and straighten them out. You know, it's like people sometimes say, well, you know, you're just bossy. You're just a bitch. And, you know, I would say, like, well, you say that like it's a bad thing. And of course, they would never say that about men. And I take them on. You know, they think they can say that stuff to women, and you know, we'll just take it. But no. So I've always been. I had my astrology chart done just recently for fun, and it says you have the power to go to battle, and if you do, people want to be on your team. And I understand what that means. Yeah, so. And I have my power now because I'm free of all of the stuff I used to think about being in relationships with men, being the little family with the white picket fence and all that. I mean, I've bought and sold houses. I'm kind of done with all that. So I'm free. And that's really what I wanted from the time that I wanted to leave my parents, although I adored them and they were the best parents ever in the whole world. I was always looking for that next door to freedom, that door to experience, that door that would catapult me into a new space. So that's what I always did. I just kind of kept pushing through the doors, and it was a real tough one when I had one foot in the door of being married and one foot in the door of going off on the magical mystery tour with drugs, sex, and rock and roll. So I had to manage that, but I did. So.
We've covered a lot, and we still have a couple of minutes, Aralyn. So I'd like for you to just, as you do, freestyle it. What is something that you really want the women here tonight and those who are going to watch this? What do you want to tell them? What's really important for them to hear from you?
Probably that feminism changed my life. I don't know where I would be had I not had those women leaders, those women that spoke out. And I had access to TV, and I had access to the magazines they wrote, and I had an ability to have a role model for the first time, someone who was speaking out and thinking along the lines that I was. And then just my, what was the question I get? The feminist movement was very strong.
Advice for them?
I actually, when we first talked about this, I sat down one time and said, if I could just get up and lecture 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, and tell these women what I think I know and what they should be cautious about and they should do in their lives and they should think about, and it's like, you know, I don't want to be their mother. I don't want to be the know-it-all. I certainly don't have all the answers. I have my own issues and questions about, you know, getting older, and I'm on the, you know, I have, there's a future and a past, and I have a much bigger past than I do future. And many of you have a much bigger future than you have a past. And it puts you in a kind of a different, on a different bike, you know, of where you're going. But I do feel honored to be in this group as a Maven, because I think one of the things is that it's very easy to become invisible when you're older. I don't feel too useless yet, because I'm kind of out there still doing things on my bucket list, but I feel, yeah, so I don't know. I know our time's about gone, so I'm going to quit talking.
Do you have a mantra? Do you have a saying that you chant in your head? Weird is wonderful.
Every year I have a motto that I just kind of keep in mind that year. And the one this year is, how simple are you willing to let it be? Because I'm kind of, you know, out there. My mind is clicking all the time, and I can read a lot of things in, and I just, life is much simpler now that I can bring that to the forefront when I'm processing things.
Wonderful. That's a perfect bookmark to hold here while Lita gathers some questions from all of our wonderful attendees. I believe, Lita, you have a question for Aralyn to start us off with, so I'm going to turn the floor over to you.
The question is, and we have 4 minutes, Aralyn, 4 minutes. You and I talked about the last time that you lived through something as monumental as what we're going through now, a global situation. And you've lived through something else, and you expressed to me what happened after the Vietnam War was the example that you gave me in our private conversation. And I got so much value out of hearing your wisdom from what changed and altered after you know, life as we knew it then, before and after the Vietnam War. I'd like to share that as we're going through this current time. If you can just give any wisdom from your experience living through the Vietnam War and what you learned and gained from that in 4 minutes.
Okay, well, number one, always expect change, because it's going to happen. And always expect things to have challenges and be difficult, and they will be. And when the Vietnam War went on, it was the most abrupt shaking of my mind and body and soul that men that I went to high school with and college early years went to Vietnam and came home in body bags. And you can see I'm emotional about it now because that affected me that much, because it was my first experience with death. And it was my first experience with people I know. And it was my first experience where I got to see a war up close and personal on TV, because we never had TV until then. And they were over there right in the fields. And so it was very disruptive to my life, and set me in a trajectory of thinking about a lot of different things. But I also know that was then, and I'm still here. And now we're in another disaster, and there's been all kinds of things along the way. And somehow we just kind of go on and always think that you'll never get through this one, but somehow we do, and it changes, and we come out on the other side a different way, because certainly my compassion and my respect was heightened by those boys that I knew who didn't come back. So it was life-changing.
Thank you for sharing that as we're going through another life-changing, life-altering experience. Okay, I just want to thank you, Aralyn. That is our time for tonight. Once again, I said we will have follow-up email with her contact information and links to her movies and books and other talks that she's done. So you can always reach out to her if you want to connect on a deeper level. She will be living in community housing soon. So if anybody is looking for community housing with a Maven, that is an opportunity. You can follow up with her and see about her new community housing project in downtown Austin and Travis Heights. Affordable housing in Travis Heights. There you go, ladies. Okay, we're going to close. Just thank you. Can everybody just, give her a little finger wiggle of love and appreciation on the screen? People are saying, thank you, Aralyn. We could have listened to you talk all night. People are feeling the same way. I feel the same way. So this is just a beautiful beginning of a new relationship with this woman. And we thank you for adding so much value to Austin and our community, for the generations that you have and the generations that you will ahead too. I'm planning on you being here for a long time.
Oh boy. Thank you.
All right. Okay. Thank you.